I gotta say, Arlecchino actually turned out a lot better than I thought she was gonna be. Usually normal attack characters don't really have the highest of multipliers even if they're crowned, but for Arlecchino's sake, it was actually kind of odd to see a front-loaded normal attack damage dealer. It is currently week number 2 of her release, so her talent can possibly be crowned if you got lucky and got 3 drops 2 weeks in a row, but for most of us, we're sitting at 966. But the day she released, the first thing I noticed about her that I loved was her bond of life is basically her power or her mana, right? So when you swap out of her, you don't actually lose it. And it's very reminiscent to Noelle. If anybody remembers Noelle, literally base character from the beginning of the game, I don't think there's many characters who actually have the same kind of ability as this, where you can use her burst, and when you swap off of her, you still have the burst active. So you can swap back into Noelle and she'll still have her burst. That is what Arlecchino can do as well. Of course, it's not her burst this time, but it's her bond of life mechanic that gives her the Pyro infusion. And that's a big W for a character, especially that, you know, a character in this game where you want a Cosmo swirl and you have your Bennet burst, where these buffs don't really last all that long. So you kind of have to swap back into these characters to cast them again. That is such a great feeling of playing this character. And secondly, she has so many team comps. I did not see that coming. I honestly thought it was all going to be Bennet comps. And it mostly kind of is. I'm really getting sick and tired of Bennet being a part of every single like attack scalar team. So I took the initiative to try and like venture out and try Chevrouse or like, you know, Fischl, Beto, Chevrouse with her. Even Vape just with no Bennet and Zhongli instead. And honestly, yeah, the damage will fall off in comparison to having Bennet's buff, but it doesn't fall off to the point where it's like unplayable. It's still very clearable without Bennet on the team, and I've been loving that. Weapon options, there's not too many. Honestly, the drip was just too strong with this one. I had to get the scythe. I've spent about, I'd say 40, 50, maybe even 60 resin on this set, and this is the best I ended up with. So it's gonna take a while to get actual good substats on this set, but in the meantime, I definitely use Gladiator, which is a much better ratio, and Gladiator will probably be what people use for a long time before they get a good one. Also, she is a character who has a new weekly boss, so of course you're gonna have to have a slow and methodical build with her talents. And not to mention, like I said before, her artifact set is brand new. So a couple things that are kind of bringing her release down in terms of giving her full potential. But it's kind of cool because you see her kind of slowly and gradually get stronger as weeks go on. So kind of cool. And I have to mention this. During her beta cycle, there was a handful of names that have been thrown out regarding her. The first one was Big Hu Tao. That very quickly got turned into not as good as Hu Tao and more like Melee Yoimiya. Then some changes happened and apparently she was Pyro Al-Haytham, which sounded very intriguing. Then that got revoked at the end and she was back to Melee Yoimiya. And the problem with comparisons is you immediately think of the power level of the character and not so much the exact playstyle. Of course, Yoimiya is a bow and arrow character and Arlecchino is a melee, so hence the name Melee Yoimiya. But in terms of damage, nothing's wrong with Yoimiya, no offense to her, but I was really thinking she was going to be on par with her when it comes to her damage, that being Arlecchino and Yoimiya having the same. So I didn't really expect too much out of Arlecchino in terms of strength. I just thought she was going to have a really cool playstyle, but this damage may not have been there. I was wrong. The damage is most definitely there. And I was like, hold up a second. When I saw her Mask of the Red Death, which is an awesome name by the way, when I saw the multipliers for this, it kind of threw me off because a lot of normal attack kind of characters like Wander here, this is a crowned skill here. And you can see it's at 153 and 143. Now he is a catalyst user, that is worth mentioning, but that's a crown talent and it's at 153. If we go to, once again, someone like Yoimiya is at 161. If we go to someone like Risley, also a catalyst user, he's at 163 at level 8. He does get a little bit higher at level 10, but you only go up by like 3% each time, so like 170 it would be. These guys are all at 160, 170, Wander at the lowest with 160. Arlecchino's, number one, is up here in her normal attacks, not down here. It was already surpassing all of them at like level 6 or 7. So that's when I kind of started to think maybe I was wrong about my first interpretation of her and her damage. It was kind of alarming to see that number be a lot higher than theirs. And it's also not even like a skill normal attack character. It's actually just in the normal attacks. But after all, it is a brand new mechanic in terms of a character having it into their kit. And I like it a lot. I think it's cool how the Bond of Life is not just a meter. It's not just power. The whole point of the Bond of Life is she does more damage the higher it is. So it's not just a meter. You actually do want to try and find ways to keep your Bond of Life high. So that's the game you're playing within the game, is trying to keep your Bond of Life as high as possible. If you somehow are in a situation where there's multiple enemies, you can time it right where you can actually take out an enemy and it can get higher, or you can wait for it to charge and get even more Bond of Life. So that mechanic with just Bond of Life in general is pretty cool, and I hope they do it more with more characters. Now, as far as team comps go, the community was like, hey, this is the team right here. Like, this is going to be her strongest team. And it is very strong. You could take out Galen and put Farina in there as well, which I was going to do. However, people were absolutely terrified and scared of this team because Farina takes away half your HP, leaving Arlecchino to be a glass cannon. But the way I see Arlecchino, she's kill or be killed. You know, you really got to do the damage before they do damage to you. And with her front-loaded capabilities, she can do that. And a lot of people forget about her, but don't leave out Candace. Candace actually is pretty cool. If you have her C6, she has like this nice AoE hydro damage that happens every time you switch characters. And it can be really cool with a character who wants the vape, especially someone who does normal attacks as well, like Arlecchino, because she also buffs that with her burst. So do not forget about Candace. Do not sleep on Candace. If you have her cons, you should definitely give it a shot. More comps. I absolutely love this one to death. I only have C0 Chevy, unfortunately, so I was hoping she'll be on a banner soon. But my god, man, to not have to play Bennet is such a joy, and I love it so much. This is one of my favorite Arlecchino teams. You have the defensive utility that actually works out in the team's favor. You have Fashil proccing the damage, and you can have LG on her as well. You could also do this. Throw Kazuha in there if you want to lose the Chevy passive but gain more damage bonus. I mean, like I said, anybody out there who has C6 Chevers, kudos to you, hats off to you. You got to be having a time of your life. And then there's Melt. Now hear me out. Usually Melt is not something too many people do because our cryo characters just don't have strong enough cryo application to kind of make that happen. You definitely can play Melt teams. Diona C6 or Kaya or Zarya, it can definitely be done. But typically with the Pyro characters that we have, it wasn't really seen as a thing that was like a go-to. Now the reason why Melt can actually work with Arlecchino is because you mark the enemy with her All As Ash ability, and that will apply Pyro. But the little Blood Blossom DOT effect that it has, that actually doesn't apply Pyro. Now this is actually very similar to Xianyun. Now Masanori has Pyro on him. If I do my little hop, you can see I actually do a number to Masanori, but I don't actually take away the aura. The aura is just going away because of time. But Xianyun's little jump is not actually getting rid of it, even though it is doing damage. It's much like that with Arlecchino, where she has the mark on the enemy, but the DOT effect doesn't actually apply Pyro. So Melt is actually an option when it comes to Arlecchino. It's actually kind of shocking that Melt can really be something of use, but here it is right here. You can swirl cryo, do your Bennet burst, go into Arle, and you can see I got like 177 there. Now while I was testing, Kaya was definitely my favorite out of the bunch to actually melt with Arlecchino. Shenhe's burst wasn't terrible, but it's kind of unrealistic to burst that often. Layla doesn't apply it quite fast enough because you have to do your elemental skill to proc the stars, and you're not really doing that when you're mashing the normal attack button on Arlecchino. Charlotte is pretty good too. It's hard to do the TTDS rotation, but she actually will add Cry on the enemy and keep it on them for a bit. She's not bad. Rosaria's not bad either. Diona theoretically should be one of the best with her C6 with the EM boost, and the rest, no. But overall, I was very surprised to actually see that Melt is a viable option with her. We tried Burgeon, but yeah, you're looking to die very quickly with Arlecchino on that one. But Toma, I want to mention too, is a viable option as well. With his shield and the way it works, normal attacks increase its strength and keep it going for longer. So if you're looking for a defensive option, Toma is also available there. And of course, you have Mono Pyro. Now, Mono Pyro actually performs very well. Once again, you have a lot of benefits with Xianyun and Bennet on the team, giving Arlecchino a lot of pyro damage. C6 Xianyun, C6 Bennet, they both help out. Pyro Renaissance as well. So it's a really good time for Mono Pyro because it'll give Arlecchino a lot of help. And yes, believe it or not, Arlecchino with Geo. You get both of the Renaissance, you get Pyro and Geo, which is a lot of attack in the end, and protection. Zhongli with Tenacity for the attack buff and the protection. Chiori with the off-field Geo hits, Bennet with the buff. So it all kind of works together. Normal attacks are your friend when it comes to Chiori comps. So, and also don't forget about Yunjin as well, going back to Candace being a normal attack buffer. So is Yunjin. Of course, if you have her constellations herself, she has a attack speed buff at C6, so that'll definitely come in handy with Arlecchino. Just be rapidly attacking the enemy. And obviously you just have a additive buff on your normal attacks with her. And once you level it up enough, it actually does make a pretty big difference. Only problem with the Yunjin is just the amount of energy recharge it takes to keep her burst up. But you can run Zhongli, like I said. And also don't forget about Archaic Petra. So Archaic Petra on Zhongli can be great for Arlecchino. It's like a mini VV almost. Then there's Arlecchino Plunge. I haven't experimented too much with this, but when I did, I noticed Arlecchino's plunge animation is kind of slow, and her normal attacks is what actually gets the bonus. So yeah, it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be, but with a high invested Xianyun, it will still hit pretty hard. You know, with her weapon, of course, and VV, especially with Pyro doing the damage, and C2 Xianyun as well. So, you know, even at C0, you will see an increase. But, you know, with high investment level Xianyun, pretty much anybody who plunges is going to do pretty good damage. But I'll say I don't really like the plunge Arlecchino as much. I'd rather either go with Gaming or even Hu Tao for that, or Dia. But anybody who can stand in the Bennet circle to get the Pyro infusion, or anybody else really. But, you know, plunge is always going to be an option nowadays going forward with Xianyun existing in the game. And it is something that you could do. You know, it won't be bad. It's just Arlecchino's plunge is kind of slow. She does indeed pass the Venti check. The Venti check is just to see if a character can actually hit the enemies that are in Venti's vortex. And the answer is yes. Her range does hit far enough to actually hit the enemies in the vortex above. So Venti teams are actually an option with her. But yeah, as far as teams go, there's Overload, there's Vape, there's Melt, there's Mono Pyro. I mean, you name it. You can kind of just throw her in whatever you really want. Burgeon is a little on the dangerous side, but if you do want to go with that, you can. But overall, I am genuinely impressed. I didn't think she was going to be as good as she was. I really didn't think the team comps were going to be so plentiful, and I didn't think she was going to hit as hard as she did. And I will say the fundamentals about her, like the small things, her lunge for the E is kind of insane. The AoE for it too. Like, she will literally chase somebody down a mile. The normal attack animations definitely lunge real far after someone, and it can be kind of annoying when it comes to someone like Bennet and trying to stay within his circle, but that's kind of more of a Bennet problem than an Arlecchino problem. And the whole having to burst to get your health back because you can't heal otherwise, I don't really mind it personally. You know, I don't really mind it that much. I mean, it kind of would break her entire kit because the whole thing is Bond of Life, and if you heal it off, obviously there's no more Bond of Life left, which means no more power. So I don't really mind the whole not healing thing. It definitely will make her feel like a glass cannon against someone like Capellia, but once again, Capellia will annihilate anybody for the most part. So unless your name is like Dia or you're in a Zhongli shield. But so overall, yeah, we are at C0. You'll see I have an exclamation point here because I did pull more because I like the character. But We're C0, we are R1, we are 966 with the talents, level 90, and unfortunately 0 EM. I'm rocking the new set just to see what it's like. I know it's really bad, but typically we want a gladiator that would look like this. More like 78 over 209, about there. It could be a little bit better with some better pieces, but yeah, not the best even still, honestly. I would like to be a little bit better, but I'm trying to put my efforts into the new set. But overall, glad, still very good, 35% damage, and bottom life is 54 across all of her damage, so it is definitely worth the upgrade if you want to min-max your Arlecchino. If not, you know, you can just stick with this. We've had this set for a very long time. It's always been in the game, so you probably have god pieces on this. And yeah, we will see how she fares in the future. A lot of people have the feeling that there's going to be Natland supports, more Bond of Life characters in the future or something like that. That's kind of the theory going around, but she's great, you know. Very happy with this Harbinger we have here, and some child Tartagula teams might be funny to try with the extra normal attack level. There's definitely potential going forward, so I really hope the Pyro Archon can rid us of the Bennet circle. And one small thing too, I love her energy regeneration. 5 particles for every E. It really helps if you're lacking on ER with Bennet. And lastly, I can definitely say Arlecchino fits in the top 3 best Pyro DPSs in the game. There's not too many of them, but I would say it's Hu Tao, Lenny, and of course Arlecchino herself. That is like the top 3 I would say now. Of course Xianyun has her own spot in the game. You know, but Hu Tao, you can always make the argument of, you know, you can always talk about this and how she's better here, she's better there. Same thing goes for Lenny. He's better here, he's better there, better nuke, better this. Arlecchino, we'll all have to figure it out as we go at this point. And this character still has yet to reach her full potential. So we gotta wait a couple more weeks. 2, I think 3 more weeks to triple crown her. So it'll be a while before then. But Lenny, Hu Tao, Arlecchino, for sure, best 3 power DPS in the game. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. What do you think Arlecchino stands in her position? Do you like her? Are you skipping her for Clorin and the rest of the crew? That'll be all for me. I will catch you guys in the next one.